Language arts is not the bad guy. Understanding what it looks like in the world of work, whether it's writing a standard operating procedure, your resume, you
Yeah.
can't escape those skills. Let us show you how it's used, and you may have to use it every day. And then we're going to give you feedback until you do it really, really well. These
There you
students
go.
do live in the real world and they have real consequences and real lives, real expectations. They don't necessarily have the world of work expectations. How do
Yeah.
we flip the narrative for how core subjects, math, science, social studies, really even personal finance, we have the opportunity to
Mhm.
help students live those subjects and not just be passive participants in
Yeah.
curriculum.
Hello and welcome to the Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2. Today's topic area is preparing students for the technical workplace through GPS education partners. Joining me today is Amanda Daniels, who is the Director of Work-Based Learning Strategy at GPS Education. Welcome, Amanda. Thank you for joining. Appreciate
Glad to
it.
be here, Scott.
Yeah, yeah. You guys are doing some amazing work at GPS. We were just talking a little bit here before we hit record, and yeah, I know some what GPS is, and but it's been a while, so I'm super excited to have the pod and have you on the pod to talk a little bit about it. But to get us started, give us a little background. How did you get where you are at now?
A long and winding road, right? Because career
Yeah,
pathways are not straight, they're not hallways for most of us. I have
love it.
more than 20 years of youth development experience. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. I've been a camp director, I've done corporate training to raise money for camps, I've done youth apprenticeship programs, alternative education
Mm,
programs, I've been the director of a Boys and Girls Club. So lots of experiential, hands-on learning by doing background. And in Wisconsin, a lot of experience with the youth apprenticeship program.
mm, mm.
And happy to say that I came up through GPS Ed as a classroom instructor at one of the education centers. And then, depending on who you talk to, promoted or demoted to curriculum, and then
Yeah.
moved up to support other schools in building their career readiness adventures that they propose for students.
Nice, nice. What GPS program was that?
I started the classroom in Appleton.
Oh wow. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
We'll dive into what GPS is here in a moment, but you and I have had some really good conversations around, yeah, education really does need to shift, transform, change a little bit. And one of the things that I've heard you say also is every student deserves access to like work-based learning and really that career connected process. Why do you see the need for change in education?
Well, there are two conference keynote speakers that said it best. The
Mhm.
first told the joke about the caveman brought back to life. They took him around and everything he saw and the transportation modes were so overwhelming. And they took him to a school and he finally felt comfortable because the classroom looked exactly the same as it did when he was a
Right.
student. Okay,
Wow.
so that's not acceptable.
No.
The second speaker said, how do we go from 3-year-olds who continuously ask why, right? The curiosity that can't be quenched to students who don't even want to raise their hands in class.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fundamentally, we have broken education for our students. And there has to be a time and a place where we think if we want to innovate, we have to re-inspire curiosity. And the
Mhm.
only way to help students do that in a way that's going to drive our future forward is to provide integrated experiences in the community and the workplace.
Mhm. Amen. Well said. I mean, I totally on board with it. It's interesting. We'll talk a little bit more obviously as we go through the pod around, how do you shift that mindset because the caveman mentality exists as we see it. You and I working with districts, we do come across that. Um, so we do want to talk a little bit about GPS education partners. I've got your website pulled up on my other screen. It's just some great stuff. Give us a little, what is it? A little background.
Sure, sure. So over 25 years ago at this point, Generac Power Systems moved
Mhm.
into Eagle, Wisconsin, needed to hire a lot of employees and really struggled to figure out how to make that happen.
Mhm.
There weren't enough qualified individuals in the area. And so they developed a partnership with local school districts to bring high school students in. They provided the high school curriculum necessary for those students to graduate and provided on the job experience. And ta-da, here we are 25 years
Wow.
later, 8 education centers at manufacturers across Wisconsin where education is provided for juniors and seniors, and then they spend the rest of their day in the workplace. We've expanded beyond
Mhm.
manufacturing, but it is a youth apprenticeship program. We don't limit or filter by grade point average or attendance. In fact, we tend to aim for the students in the schools who are disengaged and help them find their purpose, passion, and a plan. That's one side of the house. And because we've been doing that for so long, we have learned a lot about what it takes to make work-based learning running, get work-based learning running, and also how to open the doors for more students to participate, so increase access and equity instead of the common barrier that you see in schools today, which is work-based learning is only open to
Yeah.
students who are on a CTE pathway, students with transportation, students with good attendance, and students with an acceptable GPA. And so we throw those barriers out and we figure
Wow.
out how to open pathways and doors for students who are interested and will are looking to learn in a more hands-on environment. Hands-on doesn't mean brains off, it's still hands-on,
Right.
brains on. And so they also have to be willing to learn and grow. We've taken those lessons, and I live on the side of the house that is taking those lessons and helping school districts and businesses and even regional groups. So Minnesota,
Mm.
Indiana, those are examples of states where it's easy to access high schools in a community, typically organized by county, that are either sharing resources like CESA or a
Mhm.
RESA, just a regional education support agency. And we go in and we provide support services for that whole region to think about how do we work together? How do we collaborate to
Mm.
share businesses instead of compete for businesses so that our businesses have consistent models for how to interact with students.
Wow.
So lots of community partnership, career readiness, community readiness, because there's a lot to be learned in the community and outside of the workplace as well
Yeah.
that helps students develop really important, durable skills.
Is GPS just Wisconsin based, or I'm hearing you talk about some other states. Is it expanding?
Our education centers live in Wisconsin,
Okay.
but we have clients coast to coast.
Oh
We've
wow.
worked in Oregon, we've
Hmm.
worked in Maryland, and top of the country, we're in Minnesota, like really top of
Mm.
Minnesota, all the way down to Texas. So our consulting end or our work-based learning client solutions end can work anywhere, but our education centers live within the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah. And so at the start, it was the experience within immersed into the business partner itself. In a sense, it sounds a little bit like workforce development, where they're pipeline in a sense filling some positions, but taking those students that were interested, skill set wise, would match. But it also sounds like you guys have grown. I'm really curious about your high quality work-based learning, the 4 A's. I see this up
Yeah.
on my screen here. I'm guessing some of that is a little bit newer, maybe?
So
Talk a little
over
bit
the
about
last 18 months, we've been looking at
it. Mm.
how do we turn what we do in the education center and what we teach with our clients and put it into digestible packages. And so if you were to go into an education center today or even rewind 5, 10 years ago, I don't know that you would have ever heard us use the 4 A's, but you would
Yeah.
see it in practice. In
Mm.
fact, I think if you go into many schools, you'll see some elements of the 4 A's in practice. And
Yeah.
the 4 A's are really how do we make sure that our work is student centered, that the outcomes we're driving toward relate
Mhm.
toward a student having a career identity and a post graduation plan. So I think that's common. There's nothing new to that. The high quality work-based learning end of it, it just asks you to slow down when you're
Mhm.
planning and to think about, are you developing these competencies or these skills? Are you creating this environment so it's authentic? Authentic meaning real consequences, real workplace environment. Like a, I'll give a really strong example. This is the time of year when high schools are like mock interviews,
Right. Yeah.
right? And they put all this really amazing time and energy into getting their partners in to help students get feedback on their interviews, but there's no consequence. And real interviews have consequence. And so that
Right.
amps the anxiety. It amps the necessity to have practice and purpose and do a little research. And so thinking about how do you do better with the authenticity? How do you build in consequences? Whether it's an assignment, whether it's a competition,
Mm-hmm.
or just reframe it. Instead of making it a mock interview, you have all of those business partners. Let it be a mentorship opportunity.
Yeah.
Let it be a career coaching opportunity. So the 4 A's are really, again, student driven. What are the outcomes we're aiming for? How do we make sure it's really setting them up for success and not just a cute activity?
Yeah. They have a lot of meaning to them in regards to the four A's, definitely. Talk a little bit about, I know as a program like this, right? It's a destination sometimes schools
Mhm.
will look at, right? Or those kids.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about how do we get past that kind of barrier? Because it's you're doing such great work.
Mm.
This work almost should be in every school rather than outside of the school at a different location. Would you
Yeah.
would you agree?
Um, so the benefit of having it outside of a school is the
Mhm.
novelty of environment, right? We
Mhm.
know
Right.
that students have a mentality, they own the space, they own the place, they understand the norms
Mhm.
and the culture, and so they
Mhm.
they operate by the norms and culture that are established over the course of 4 years. When you take them out of that space and you put them into a work environment. So I used to teach at Plexus. Plexus is a manufacturing company in Appleton. My
Mhm.
classroom was literally a boardroom in the manufacturing facility. And so students got there and employees were already working because first shift started at 5:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So you see that people do show up on time and they get there early, and sometimes third shift is still there, right? You see that people aren't
Right.
running and loud in the halls. You see that people aren't on their personal phones on the production floor or at their desks. You understand what it looks like to dress appropriately for work. And so taking them out of the classroom, taking them out of the school building, that novel setting automatically
Mhm.
sets the bar higher and
Mhm.
helps students better understand the expectations of the world of work. So, do I think every school should have these opportunities? Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be learned um, from modeling what is out there and available to employees as a professional in the community. But I also think that there have to be other ways that we can provide that in the classroom
Mhm.
because that accessibility becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
Baldwin Woodville is a school district on the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. They're a Wisconsin school, and they are actually working with GPS Ed right now to build their own education center. So they're partnering with a local manufacturer. They're building their ed center as we speak, and next year they will invite juniors and seniors in to do this on their own. They
Mm.
already have a thriving work-based learning program. They already have more than 30 students every single year who do youth apprenticeship. This is how do we provide the wraparound supports for students
Wow.
who want more, who don't see the relevance in the education, don't love the social activities in the hallways in the lunchroom. And so I think we're moving into a time and a space where education leaders are starting to think differently about how to build those opportunities for students.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
Yeah. Super exciting. And it's what we should be doing.
Yeah,
I mean, I love that design and what you're talking about because it takes the GPS concept and it's connecting it to the school.
right.
right? So it shouldn't look like, oh, that's a program that some students go to. It's a part of our ecosystem and how we're designing it. Talk a little bit about that design process. How do you get, and I've heard you say this, everyone's voice at the table, the ability to be able to collectively bring this together, right? Because we're doing some of the same things
Yeah.
in some school districts in regards to it, creating that ecosystem, community educational ecosystem. We call it the impact project because we think it's going to have great impact.
Yeah.
But how do you move that forward so you do have every voice at the table? You're 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 looking at a shared vision. Yeah.
I think the best method to prevent slow downs, because when you start to throw
Mhm.
every
Yeah.
voice in the room and they don't come into a unified thought, then you just have a lot of thought you have to sift and filter.
Yeah.
I have had the most success by starting with what's the driving factor for change. If that's
Mm.
the community, right? Whether it's a community leader, a business leader in the community, or a school leader, then we start with them and we help that person, that individual, or that small group define what is the impact you're looking to have and how are you going to know you're
Mm.
going to that you have achieved it. And then we say, okay, but who cares? Like,
Yeah.
right? Because what if you have just built a really cool picture for your silo if nobody else cares? And so then
Right.
you start to layer in voices, families and students, teachers and staff, businesses and community organizations, everybody that it takes to support a thriving learning ecosystem has to have voice to say that matters, it doesn't matter, or this would matter if, and then we tweak, adjust, and drive on. And so, in a perfect world, you have everybody in the room together so their thoughts can feed off of each other once you have something for them to give an opinion on. So, again, who is the driver for change? What is their vision? Challenge it with stakeholder voices. And then from there, make sure you have a really clear vision for what change looks like when it's done well. And you build your activities and design your proof points, your key performance metrics or student outcomes from there so that your data stacks up and you know you're on track.
That's some really good stuff, and we're kind of living that in our impact project up in Nakusa.
Yeah.
We're at the beginning kind of stages, but I want to ask this though too, because that solution that you've identified is like perfect, and we're very kind of in line with it. But how do you maintain that momentum then?
Yeah.
Million dollar
Right.
question.
I think the key, once you have the clear vision and you start to bring stakeholder voices in, is you have to be ready to act fast. What's the very first thing
Mhm.
you can test and try to make sure this is the right direction?
Love it.
So that I'll give an example. I'm working with a charter school in Milwaukee, and their school leader really wanted to make sure they were living up to the career readiness for all. That's part of their mission. So
Mm.
we had a steering committee pulled together with business partners, and we were asking the question, well, how do you know a student is career ready? Like what is the output or
Mm.
what is the evidence? And the overwhelming voice in the room from business partners was they need to be able to do it on the job. So don't tell me they're career ready because they have a certificate. And don't tell me they're career
Yeah.
ready because they had a site visit or a camp. Get them
Right.
on the job with real consequences. And so we said, well, how do we build and test? Let's go. Let's get a try. And then we can figure out what the barriers are and work from there. So having an opportunity to test it really fast builds momentum, or it helps your stakeholders understand what your barriers are so you can go back and collaborate to figure out how do we do
Mhm.
this? How do we work together? Who are the community partners that we can leverage to help build this?
Mhm.
Where are there summer opportunities to expand the bandwidth of school? So pilot, I guess, is a really good way to think about it, but
Yeah.
quick wins, small bites of activity. The second they step back and see the elephant, they get really overwhelmed at how big the work is. And so you have to keep them
right?
Don't look, don't look. It's
Focus.
okay. We got this.
Right. We're seeing some of that. We're seeing
Yeah.
some of that. Yeah, it takes a commitment. It certainly does, but the actionable pieces that people can emotionally invest in is what I'm hearing you say is going to be the momentum piece for us. So yeah, good advice. Good advice. The other thing I really like in what you said, and I've used this quite a bit, is when I get in working with teachers around career connected learning and shifting their classroom towards that. I'll ask the question, what are the consequences in a general classroom in the school? Like and a lot of the times what we hear is kids working towards grades, towards credits, right?
Okay.
And then you ask the question, well, what are the consequences, positive or negative, in a workplace? And where is the transition for that? Like, where the kids just don't exit schools and become, workforce ready. And often the consequences of that real world experience is what pushes them back. Sometimes they're not prepared. So GPS is really tackling a lot of those types of great things. So nice job. Let's talk a little bit about what does transformation really look like. And so a big part, I think, of a gap that we have in our school systems is there is a navigation gap.
Mm,
Schools are not intended to help students navigate towards something they aspire towards, create those skills, align their abilities. How is that tackled with GPS? The navigation, building the navigation skills, integrating the counseling end of it, leading to really an invested work-based learning for the students.
sure. So I guess we hit it on three fronts.
Mm,
Um, the first is about self-awareness. And the key to this is if you look at what we as adults would do if we had to change lanes, change jobs, change careers, change pathways, you move to a new city, start over. It all starts with what am I good at? What do I like? And how
mm,
do I want to use that on a job? And then you go and you look and you see, well, where are their opportunities aligned with that? We mimic that with our students. We have students in our ed centers who come in August, start of school year, and we spend time with them. What do you like? What are you good at? What experiences do you have?
mm,
What of those experiences did you like? What of those experiences did you not like? And so that leads into the second pillar, which is continuous nudging and reflection.
mm,
What do you like? What don't you like? What's interesting? And I think that what still interests you? What do you still want to learn? um, is really cool because then it leads into that third pillar, which is who do you know who's doing that? And
mm,
if it's nobody, then let's go find it. But more than likely on the job, they saw something that intrigued them. And so we're going to push them in that direction. And our business partners understand that the key to retaining talent, employers think about retaining as
all
a
the
key
time. Yeah.
priority, right?
Mm,
Is creating curiosity for opportunity. And so,
mm,
how do you help young adults in your workplace understand what the next step is or what other opportunities are? So, business partners rally around the idea of students becoming curious and having the opportunity to explore, whether it's they take an hour out of their youth apprenticeship to go shadow the person doing that job, they drive over to the other facility to go see this machine run. It can work in a variety of ways, but it's about who you know, what you know about yourself, and reflection to be able to have this time and space to think about how do you put those two pieces together in order to
mm.
find your next pathway. And we spend a lot of time on that. And I think you talk about early days of GPS ed and are we using it as a workplace or a workforce solution? Sure. Absolutely. We really
Mhm,
want our students
mhm,
to find their niche. And if it's at one of our employers, we know that the state rewards that and our employers appreciate that. But the reality of the situation is, even students who don't stick come back because they knew that they found a place in a space
mhm,
and they understand how to navigate that environment because they've spent 2 years or 18 months learning how to navigate their careers. And that is transformational, empowering students enough to reflect, to make connections, and to activate on that. Um, that's power. That's transformation.
Yeah, it certainly is. And GPS, I think, has found that secret sauce, and that is what you just talked about had a lot to do with social and relational capital building,
Yes.
right? And which leads then to economic mobility.
Mhm.
And when you talk those few things in a traditional school classroom or even a school, um, our mindsets of our students, I think, sometimes are in this world of no, I'm here for credits. So it's super cool to hear that that's just built right into your day. It's built right into what you do. Talk a little bit about though, how do you then engage post-secondary, your industry partners, because the economic mobility is built right in. So I'm assuming there's a lot of relationships there, but I'm also assuming that there's probably a way to kind of fast track some of that, or it overlaps. It's like those students before they're 18 years old are already making some really informed decisions moving forward. So it's like right there. Talk
Yeah.
how that looks.
In our education centers, the first few months is really truly students getting comfortable with the change of rules, right?
Mm,
And you'll hear employers talk about this. Students think they know what's going to happen when they go to work, but then they get there and it's a big surprise. So once we get students comfortable with expectations and their durable skills shined and they're performing,
mm,
then we dig into that reflection. What are you seeing? Who do you know? What are you interested in? Those interests drive us to build new partnerships. I really
mm,
would like
mm,
to fill in the blank with a career opportunity. Okay, let's go figure out who's doing that and figure out what opportunities exist. Or this is the career I want to do. And okay, what do you need to know? What are the certifications? What are the entry opportunities?
mm,
Can you go straight to work? Will your employer pay for your education? Are there apprenticeship opportunities? Do you need a 2-year degree to get a licensure? Do you need a 4-year degree? And then how do we put them in it? In Wisconsin and many states across the nation, there are early college credit opportunities. So whether it's start college now, early college credit, post-secondary education opportunities is what they call it in Minnesota. Sometimes the best next step for building partnerships is helping students explore what does it take to get where you want to go. It doesn't mean they're going to go finish that degree. It
mm,
means that a great next step for them to learn and explore is a class. And so we're promoting lifelong learning. We're promoting connection and understanding of the post-secondary processes. If it's a business, we are promoting networking. You can make the call, student Amanda.
mm.
I can help
Right,
you figure out who to call, but you can
right.
make the call, send the email, ask for a tour of the facility. I can support you in doing that. And so
Mhm,
sometimes the connections we make are because we are trying to expand our opportunities for our students and we know it's just the right conversation.
mm,
But a lot of times, the expansion of our partnership opportunities comes from student curiosity and interest. And
mm,
we support them in figuring out how do we go out there and get that done.
mm.
Um, Also, it doesn't hurt that word of mouth, business partners get excited when you do it right, right? And do it right
Yeah.
means students are well aligned, well prepared, and well supported. And guess what? So is the business partner. So I
Mm,
think that's key. That model can feel very hard to replicate that high support. So that's one of the reasons we do the professional development on our work-based learning consultation side is to help other schools figure that out. The Ed Center model is naturally built for that because students spend more time in the workplace than they do in the classroom.
yeah. Great stuff. One of the things when we work with a more intentional career connected approach within classrooms, at the onset, we see our students not able to have those durable skills to take that initiative, right? But over time, as we help support and bring that vision even to the students, you see real big impacts. So give a few examples from what you see in your students, because I would imagine it's somewhat similar, like they're a little reluctant at the front end to even pick up a phone to call somebody. But over time, I'm sure you're seeing these durable type skills being developed and kids just taking off on their own. So give some examples of what you've seen in regards to what I look at as that impact data.
Yeah, I have to imagine that what we're doing is very similar because I've heard stories from teachers who have worked with you
Mm,
about how students in group projects failed epically because they were
yeah,
uncomfortable having conversations with their peers to make sure the group dynamics worked appropriately.
yeah, yep. That's very
In
true.
GPS Ed, the peers are their production floor associates or their construction team
Mm,
associates or their name your place of employment, it's their colleagues. And they aren't peers, right? Sometimes they are 40 years seniors to the students who are on the floor. And sometimes they're only 5 to 10 years. And that makes it a weird peer dynamic. Um, and so we do two pieces of support. We do direct instruction. This is what effective communication looks like. This is what
mm,
conflict resolution looks like. This is what self-awareness and self-management look like. And then we have the students chime in and say, this is what I saw on the job floor, and this is how I would have solved it, or this is how I
mm.
solved it, which is kind of cool because it matches behavioral interview questions, right? You think about the
Right.
situation and how you responded and um, what your choice was, what impact your choices or behaviors made on that situation. But it's also cool because it helps students develop their voice and their leadership when
Mm,
they can come back and say, here's what I saw, here's how I would change it. We have really open lines of communication with our business partners to understand how students are doing. Students are evaluated routinely on their durable skills. Um, so there's always feedback, and
mm,
they get very conditioned to receiving feedback and self-reflecting. So we don't just ask our business partners to fill out the employability checklist that now comes part of the youth apprenticeship sheet, right?
right.
We ask students to reflect on it, and then we facilitate conversation between their supervisor or their mentor and themselves. How did you rate
Mm,
yourself? Why that score? Business partner Amanda, how did you rate the student? And we facilitate some discussion back and forth to help them calibrate on their view and expectation and their supervisor's view and expectation. So
mm.
direct instruction, clear feedback, and teaching opportunities really help students deliver on the durable skill expectations employers have.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going down the path of what I was going to ask next, which is, how do you assess? Talk a little more about that assessment with some of the core subject area
Mhm.
pieces, because students are going to come to you still needing credits. I can
Absolutely.
imagine they're going to be super excited about the work component, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, but we also have to, learn the math behind it.
Mm,
Talk a little bit about how you bridge that gap, and then also how do you assess that?
sure. With our core skills, in GPS Ed world, it's very easy, right? When
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
teach language arts, we make it very clear to students. Everything you need to know in language arts, it works here and it's necessary here, right? It's research, it's oral communication, it's written communication, it's vocabulary, it's reading for information. All of those same skills your high school teacher was teaching you, you need them. And we demonstrate that. We demonstrate that with leadership opportunities to teach in the classroom. Here's what I learned on the job.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's your oral communication, but also interview skills, oral communication, written communication. Cover letters are narrative and require research to show that you
Mhm.
understand. And they're very different from a resume, which is much closer to technical writing in that you're highlighting very specific information tailored to a key audience. And so we help students understand language arts is not the bad guy. Understanding what it looks like in the world of work, whether it's writing a standard operating procedure, your resume, like you, you
Yeah.
can't escape those skills. Let us show you how it's used, and you may have to use it every day. And then we're going to give you feedback until you do it really, really well.
Mhm.
And you're
Hmm.
not done until you can prove you can do it consistently really well. So, what does it look like in the real world? I hate that phrase actually.
Yeah,
Well, let's
right.
strike that. The world of work, right? These
There you
students
go.
do live in the real world and they have real consequences and real lives, real expectations. They don't necessarily have the world of work expectations. And so, how do we
No.
flip the narrative for how core subjects, math, science, social studies, really even personal finance, now that they're making money, we have the opportunity to
Mhm.
help students live those subjects and not just be passive participants in
Yeah.
curriculum. So that helps tremendously. But we talked about business partner feedback and open lines of communication. And to be honest, when it comes to core skills, math is the one we get called on the most.
Mm.
Amanda can't convert fractions to decimals, which you have to know to weld, by the way. Amanda doesn't understand place value, which you have to know if you're measuring with a caliper and comparing to quality standards.
Right.
Can't measure using a tape measure, right? So those math skills come back and give us opportunity and a window to provide coaching on a skill that the student
Yeah.
now understands the relevance for,
100. Yeah.
right? So that
Secret
just it
sauce right
flips the
there.
narrative, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that is the secret sauce. We're leading in our educational system with the wrong stuff,
Mhm.
academics first, and really we need to lead in a different way. And you guys are definitely hitting it. We're getting close to the end, but I do want to ask this question of you. How do we get there? How do we shift the mindsets of an education, an academic first environment system to see? I mean, what you guys are doing is great work. Obviously, it's in a sense it's specialized, but you got it going on. We want to make more of that happening within our school systems. So how do we get there? How do we shift mindsets to see the importance of this over academics first?
Ooh, I don't think it's an either or.
Huh?
I think we have to stop that thought and think about education should be inspirational.
Mm,
It should spark curiosity and it should help your students see that that curiosity, that hunger, we need it for our local economies and our
mhm,
communities to survive. And we need it for our national and global economies to thrive. If we keep doing the same things over and over and we don't find inspiration for new
mhm,
use, new application, and we can't communicate it, and we can't do research to see where we came from, and we can't do the
mhm,
math to validate the research, right? It is all of these skills intertwined that help us do amazing things. And so if we can all anchor on how do we inspire our students and then accept help, because you don't have to do it
mhm,
alone. There are community partners, there are business partners, there are local foundations, there are volunteer networks that all want to inspire students. And
mhm,
so they're all doing the work by themselves. You have 100 little ants trying to build their own colonies instead of working together. And the power that we could achieve together to build inspired students is so much greater than anything we're ever going to accomplish than if all we do is focus on, but test scores and certifications are what make my state happy, my administrator happy, my school,
yeah,
like, right? Yeah,
yeah.
but
So I
wait till
know
your
it.
whole community is excited about what you're doing.
Right. The ecosystem.
The
That's the
ecosystem
direction.
matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could do a whole pod, so maybe we're going to do a series, you and I, on this because how we get there is, again, yeah, it's its own pod. But it's exciting work because it's what we need to be doing. And I really enjoy how you said it's not an either or. They go hand in
They go
hand.
hand in
And
hand.
and that's the establishment of, that reculturing of the school system so we see our students want to engage in it
Mhm.
and find the purpose and the relevance. It's some really, really good stuff. All right, as we get right up to the end, tell us a little bit about you and GPS. Anything new happening out in front of us that we should know about? Yeah, have at it. Let's hear it.
I, we just put out the book, Make School Work.
Oh, yeah.
It has our top lessons and what we've learned over the last 25 years. I work with an entire team of amazing human beings that help
Hmm.
schools district wide figure out how do you do that? How do you do that across every classroom? How do you do that in your work-based learning programs? How do you do that with your career readiness and college readiness programs? And we do it through program design,
Hmm.
and we do that through professional development, and we do that through building your ecosystem because you may not be thinking about the Boys and Girls Club who has workforce development programs or money to help you provide certifications. And so those three services in the book, we're there to help schools move the needle toward inspired students through work-based learning.
Good stuff. Good stuff. As we're nearing the end of my career, I'll say, because I'm getting older, maybe GPS and I could have a little second gig in my second life as I retire. I'm hearing a great match. Would you hire me, Amanda? Putting you on the spot.
You're already doing what we're driving at, so it's a natural fit. I don't know that it would be retirement, right? Nobody working
Yeah.
in education would ever say it's a light lift.
Right. Right. I
Uh,
totally get it.
and
Totally
it
get it. I love
takes
it.
it takes a lot of inspired people to spark the energy back into
Yeah.
the life, right?
Yeah. Well, my mind went to you guys are starting to really expand throughout the nation. And during the wintertime, if I could be down south, that might be the deal we work out.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Florida, if that's your environment, they're
Ah,
working really hard to rethink work-based
mm,
learning.
mm,
Texas has strong and amazing pockets, and the things they're
mm.
doing in San Antonio are blowing my mind. So the South is a great region. Let's go get
Right.
them.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So I see a future. Thanks. Okay, what the very last question I like to ask our guests is this, in our tagline, it says teach like it's 2045. What do you see education looking like in 2045?
Man, in a perfect world, 2045, which is just doesn't even feel like it's that far away anymore, is where we
Right.
stop having pockets of greatness and we start having pools of success.
Mm,
If we could just get all of us who are working so hard to re-envision inspired students and inspired learning to come together and drive as a force, 2045 could look
mm.
like innovation and excitement in our classrooms where students aren't choosing a college or career path, they are solving how they want to apply their knowledge, skills, and talents
Wow.
towards today's problems or
Wow.
tomorrow's problems if we're looking forward.
That's powerful. That should be on the inside of a book. So if you haven't written a book yet, but what it made me think is bringing curiosity into the educational system because we lose it so early with students. But yeah, great, great, wonderful stuff. Thank you for joining. If people want to get in touch with you or GPS, how would they do that?
Very easy. You have two email options. You have A Daniels at gpsed.org or info at gpsed.org. Very easy. Come and
Easy.
find us. Love to connect.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks again, Amanda. Keep up the great, impactful work that you do. Appreciate it.
Ditto. Can't wait to collaborate someday.
Yeah, for sure. I'll hold you to it.
All right.
All right. And as we depart, remember the future is clear. Take care, everybody.